Today, we're going to be talking about Dirt and Legends, the new Coronation short on the Eastern Museum of Motor Racing, on dirt racing on Lynn Paxton, the legendary race car driver, and on what it took to avoid serious damage to our cameras and expensive cars. Welcome to Heralds and Fools, the podcast where we talk shop. We talk about client projects, passion projects, the nitty-gritty details of what makes creative life so fun. Today we're with Joe Fafelsky and Kevin Lorman, who both sort of co-directed and co-everythinged this piece, would you say? You guys didn't give me credits. Did you direct it? You keep talking like
Joe definitely directed it.
Yeah.
And
Joe has been reticent to say he directed it, though.
Well, because it was like, we were both running around doing everything together. But I guess in technicality, yeah, I was the one pushing your buttons.
yes, definitely say that.
Yeah. So yes, I guess director, everything else.
DP.
But
DP,
Joe also
editor.
involved in all the other stuff.
It was just a buddy film.
It was just
Yeah.
a little passion project.
Joe definitely had the vision, and I helped out on the technical stuff, I guess.
So talk to me about Dirt. How did this all come about?
Yeah. So basically, to kind of backtrack a little bit, I had stopped in at this car museum that I didn't realize was there, but it was right next to my parents' house.
Okay.
At least right down the street. I'd stopped in and started looking around. I was like, this car museum is incredible. Like, how have I never heard of this before?
What's it called?
It's called EMMR, so the Eastern Museum of Motor Racing.
Okay.
And yeah, basically I stopped in, took a look around the place, and immediately kind of like fell in love. I was like, this place is awesome. I'm definitely gonna be hanging out here as often as I can with my kids and my family. And then started thinking about it, thought it was like, maybe I could do a little video for them or something. And then they had this on-track event. So the amazing thing about this museum is they also have a historic racetrack, white picket fence dirt track. Right down the way from the actual museum. So I decided I was going to go down and watch one of these exhibition races where they bring out a lot of historic cars and race them around this track. And it was awesome. It was super cool. It's free. It was an amazing experience. And immediately I thought, I got to make a video about this place. This is super cool. And then from there, brought it to you and Bill and was like, hey, I've got this little idea. We should go film some old race cars in this museum. And you guys were gracious enough to say sure, go for it. And then we got super busy. A lot of stuff happened. Basically a full year later, when we finally got around to doing, I guess, more real pre-production on the project, went down to the museum, to talk to the folks there. And in progress, or I guess in the process of trying to establish this video, Lynn Paxton passed away. And Lynn Paxton was the person that I wanted to interview about the museum. He's a legendary race car driver, dirt track racer, and a legend. The guy was an incredible man. And I was lucky enough to meet him one day when I went into the museum and started chatting with him. And he just, he started to explain a lot of the history of the place. And so in my head, he was the guy I was going to talk to the most for the video about the museum. And then when I found out that he passed away, I realized I needed to shift gears and completely change this video to no longer necessarily being just about racing culture in general, but more specifically about Lynn Paxton and his legacy with this museum.
So I remember that at the time we had talked a lot about trying to get some other projects done. And then Joe came on board and I had been thinking man, I want to do something about cars for a while. Car culture was something that I was always interested in. Didn't know a whole lot about. I've known a lot of guys that are in the car culture, but and it's been something that's always interested me, but I didn't know a ton about it. And then Joe came on board, and he was very knowledgeable with car culture.
Joe's a big car guy.
And initially, I remember at one point I was I had the idea of making a video about car restoration and whatnot. And you had given me some resources about that. And then one day you came in and oh, I got something. This is it.
Yeah.
And
So you were already searching. You already wanted to do something.
yeah,
with cars
yeah. It was just like it's such a unique culture and such a both in terms of like the people and then also the actual machinery and all that. Like it's yeah, and especially something that as far as like something to be filmed, it's a very visceral world to be filming, and it's a very exciting thing to film just 100%. In general.
Especially these cars too, because these are like older machines, and they're definitely like they're not Teslas. You know, they're not just smooth little objects. They're like they've got some muscle on them, and they feel visceral.
Yeah, and so when he came in with this about this museum, I was like, that's way cooler.
Yeah, I think it vibes with a lot of the stuff we do at Coronation, which tends to be a little throwbacky. Like we do a lot of throwback sort of like focus things, and this feels like if we were gonna ease into the world of cars and car videos, this feels like it feels Coronation. I don't know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to watch this. Let's watch this together, and then we'll break it down.
He had a feel. He had a feel for the track.
They used to race in T-shirts and little goggles.
So put all that together. You had Lynn Paxton, the driver, Lynn Paxton, the historian, but you also had Lynn Paxton, the storyteller, because Lynn loved to tell the tales.
When Lynn Paxton retired, he was the leading feature winner at all of the tracks where he competed on a regular basis. So he was like the biggest and baddest, you know. He was always the light in the room, so to speak. You know, people gravitated towards him. His dream was to build a museum.
This is the real hub of racing in the East Coast. They call it the Susquehanna Valley Racing. So this area has a lot of pride, and that's why having this museum here is so essential and so important, is to document all this and save all this racing history.
No one else was doing it. It wasn't something that the large museums or the area historical societies were really working to preserve.
And it's all laid out. As Lynn Paxton used to say, our whole idea here is to tell a story. And the story is the progression of auto racing through the years.
What's the history of the car? Who drove it? When did it race? Where did it race? What did it win? We don't display other than authentic cars. So that includes soapbox derby, quarter midget, three-quarter midget, full midgets, sprint cars, sportsmen. We have an Indy car. We do have one snowmobile.
Lynn's goal was to make this about the people. And I think he was the most proud of how it brought people together.
There were nights that there'd just be a few of us here, and Lynn would start telling the stories, and we would sit here and just laugh like crazy because the stories were so funny.
And that was the unique thing about him. And that's the part that we're missing with him not here.
The cars are just a reflection of the personalities who were involved with those cars. The cars are just the technical piece to look at and admire, but the people behind them, the people that built the cars, the people that drove the cars, they're really the heroes.
okay. So I handed it up. He looked at it. Wouldn't you know, I got the second place envelope that was crossed out. Yep, see, they even gave us a second place envelope. True story.
First, I just want to say the sound design, especially listening in these headphones, it's like the sound design kicks butt. And that's Mike, right?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, a lot of it's Kevin.
Kevin and Mike.
Yeah, Mike did a
Mike did
a
the
mix
mixing, yeah.
on it, but
He made it sound way more punchy and exciting.
I think the story is awesome. And I think like showcasing Lynn, showcasing who he was, how these people felt about him is really cool. And when we first talked about the project, you guys basically were like, cars. And I was like, that sounds great. Cars are awesome. And then when you showed it to me, I was like, oh, it has a lot of heart in it too. There's like a human heart in this that was unexpected to me when you guys were first pitching it. So we'll get to story, but let's talk a bit about cinematography because I think it looks beautiful. I think the grade is awesome. Christian did excellent on the grade.
Yeah.
But how did you get the shots inside? How did you get the car? I mean, the big one too is how'd you get those shots on the cars?
Well, I guess a lot of it was trial and error, to be honest. I mean, like Joe had the idea of wanting to make it basically like, I think the initial like concept was like a garage door opening. And like we had like that was kind of the initial like vision for the look of it being like the garage doors opening. And when we initially were talking about that, when actually going to the museum, like, oh, there's no doors to open.
Right, of course, yeah.
I feel like the idea of it kind of has shifted from the initial what we were initially thinking, but like I think that the core of it was just like showing off the cars and doing it in a way that's unique and like we're unveiling in a way the beauty of these cars and whatnot.
There's definitely comes through because I mean it's definitely like the joke that I had for you guys is like this is a video of lights turning on for 3 minutes straight.
Quite literally,
but it does feel like that garage door opening. It feels like the light being cast. Or it makes what would otherwise be a very simple shot feel much like rich and epic. Seeing the shine like massage over the cars,
and so much of that was intentional right off the bat of being like, let's not shoot something unless it's thematically part of how we're trying to tell the story. So making sure that the lighting scenarios for everything that we shot was the same, you know, and just trying to replicate that garage door reveal as many different ways as we could with as many different cars as we could within the very limited window of time that we had.
With limited crew too. Let's talk about your enormous crew for this.
Yeah,
this shoot.
it was massive.
Yeah. How many people did you have helping you?
I think around it was just 2.
Yeah, it was just us. It was literally just us 2. At one point, I laughed because we were both literally running across different points of the museum because basically the scheduling for this was kind of a nightmare. Yeah. Because we needed to schedule all the interviews and then we needed to schedule all of our B-roll for all of the video of all the cars in the museum, and it all required lighting and all that kind of stuff. And there was only 2 of us. So how do we get the number of shots that I wanted to have in the video? Yeah. And I basically, the night before the shoot, I'd been sitting and doing the math on the kind of time frame. And I was like, we are not going to have enough time to get the shots we need. So basically, we need to force ourselves to be really efficient and ruthless with, okay, this shot isn't working, move on. We need to go get something else. Yeah. And a lot of that, a lot of what made it work was honestly having 1 or 2 lights sitting on a C-stand, and we would just run the C-stand around, set it up for a different lighting scenario for a different car, but kind of following the same template.
And obviously changing every single time because like the concept initially was like, oh, this is going to be simple. We're just going to be just shining lights over cars and it's going to look good. That very quickly was not the case. Like, we had to do a lot more subtle things to make it look like different bounces. Having like there was that one shot, one of the key shots, one of my favorite shots of it, where we see like the emblem on the edge of the car. That like you see the light beam kind of being revealed. there was like a whole nother light that Joe was turning while I was doing the light reveal for that one in the background.
Wow. Okay.
That kind of made it, otherwise it felt very weird just having this random like beam of light just coming out of nowhere.
I see. So you had like a couple spotlights moving to add.
Yeah,
at different
bounce
times.
cards. Because I mean, the other thing you have to deal with too when you're filming cars is they're reflective.
Yeah.
So you can't just shine a light at a car.
Yeah.
It'll look ridiculously weird and it'll reflect all back. So you have to bounce it off of other things. And that means if you have one light kind of motivating your beam of light, that's not actually going to light the car. So you have to have some other source. And when the light's moving, that means both have to move.
Did you guys have fog in there or no? Was it no fog?
We tried.
We did, but we ended up nixing it because it was taking too long
Yeah.
to get the
Checks
haze levels that we needed in different shots.
And surprisingly, it kept on vanishing. Like
Very
we
fast,
thought,
yeah.
we thought it was like a pretty still environment. We
Yeah.
didn't. I mean, I didn't hear any heaters on while we were there, but like we would do fog and the fog would vanish in like 5 minutes. So
Well, big thanks to the museum for you know, letting us do
absolutely.
this 'cause- and facilitating that. I'm sure they weren't expecting all the lights to be off in the museum as you were filming.
as they commented on while we were filming, they were like, "Isn't it counterintuitive for them to be filming with all the lights off?" And like Joe and I are just like laughing to each other.
Yeah, like,
Talking about that. Like they'll find out. We'll show them.
yeah, they'll see. It's how it works.
Yeah, it's funny. That's always just the first move. You know, we recently shot a spot with Silvercrest, or I guess last year or whatever. And it was like the first thing, they have the beautiful office. And the first thing that we did is we just walk in and shut all the lights off.
Yeah,
Shut all the lights off. And it's one of my favorite things too. Like I love the show Succession on HBO. And if you look at their office scenes, which just tons of them are drop ceiling, it's like they're always off. Or
Yeah.
many of the
Yeah,
times
the
they're
lights are
always
always
off. It just looks so much better. Yeah, and the interview setup was very simple too, but it looks excellent. How did you like the interviews?
Actually, I guess maybe it looks simple, but it was actually
It's very complicated.
involved.
Was it?
Yeah, we had to do.
What was your setup?
What did we do? So we actually had a. I didn't quite figure out. Joe had the initial idea of basically kind of like having a blue wash over the whole museum, and then kind of having a golden light, kind of like a motivated golden light, kind of hitting the floor and then lighting, uplighting
Playing with
the
the
face.
garage door theme of like if there was a spilled light source, you know, right off camera.
Yeah, so that was kind of like the goal, and to accomplish it we just didn't have enough lighting.
You didn't have
equipment to do
enough
it.
people to.
It would have been pretty complicated. Essentially, to do that, we would have essentially needed to have more lights, but then also
that's true.
we would have had to, which wouldn't be too hard, but comp out the ceiling, because the only way to do that would be shooting blue light into the ceiling. And
Gotcha.
On the outset, it just didn't like Joe didn't like the look of like which was understandable.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
In the wide shot too that you have, because you have really wide interview shots with them, which I'm a sucker for.
Yeah.
Like I love a wide interview shot. You have, I'm assuming, digital removal on the mic on that.
yeah,
too?
for the microphone. Yeah, just on the top. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, but what was your lighting setup for? What did it end up being?
So we had a couple. It was very like super tungsten as far as the key. The key was essentially we had multiple. I think we had a 600 and like two, maybe might have been two Novas. Maybe it's, I can't quite remember, but we had a lot of light pushing into bounce cards
Okay.
as the key and into the background and into the cars that kind of basically we just shot a bunch of light away from the person and just like bounce it off.
back.
Not only the cards, but cards and cars.
Yeah,
We bounced the light off of, and it just kind of, I guess that's kind of how we landed on that. We were trying a bunch of different things. We tried like hard light initially, because we were thinking like a more dramatic look, but it looked good on the wide, but when we got close up, it looked terrible.
Right, and having to kind of mix and match, because one of the initial kind of briefs, or I guess like dreams that I had for it was I wanted our close-up interviews to be really close, really intimate. I wanted to get into people's like eyes and heads, you know.
Yeah.
And then to have the wide be very wide to kind of show sense of place.
The environment, sure.
And I think we were able to do that. And at first, our big challenge was our close-up did not look good in our wide setup. So, but once we got the wide to a place where we were happy with it, with the bounce cards and everything, and we kind of found a little bit more of a neutral look for it, then we threw in a practical lamp in the background for the close-ups, and it ended up looking incredible. We both stood there and were like, oh, the close looks way better than our wide.
Yeah, I mean, I think the close-ups look excellent.
Yeah.
I love this. Nice. I love these sorts of projects too, where it's like, it is run and gun.
Yeah.
You do have high aspirations for what it's going to look like. And you're also like cool with experimentation. Yeah. It is so fun. And I think like, and there's always this tension when you're shooting interviews, where sometimes I feel like like your spirit as like a filmmaker wants to pick these sort of incredibly close angles on people's faces, or you want to like see hands, you want to have the ability to flex. And then also you have the sort of like duty to make people look good too. Right. And I think that you guys balance that well, because I think everyone looks great on camera, but it also feels like it has a perspective. It doesn't just feel like too clean or too simple. Yeah. You can see the emotions on their faces, and you can also but it doesn't look clinical, but it also is very flattering to everyone.
Yeah, and the other like I think one of the other experimentation things that I'm not usually able to do in most of the work that we do is like doing high color contrast. So,
yeah, you got that blue and that orange really strong.
So we like, I think the key was at like 2700K, and then we had everything in the background is high temperatures you possibly can get them. So like we think we had a bar in the back that was kind of lighting up the left side, which you can see in the wide. Was just a tube light that was set at like 10,000 Kelvin.
Wow.
And the other one, the spotlight that Joe put in the back, that was at like, I think it was a 300X, so that could only go up to 6,000 Kelvin.
Yeah,
but
slashed across.
Still worked really well.
Yeah, that ended up looking really nice. And the funny thing is, a lot of that setup we ended up taking throughout the rest of the museum and doing in smaller scale.
Okay.
So we do bounce cards off of hard light, and we do color contrast, and trying to utilize as much of the actual texture of the cars to motivate the bouncing of the light, which was a lot of fun.
It's a really pushed look, and it's cool. I really like it. What I like about it too is that when you do cut out, which is limited, right? Your scenes on the racetrack are limited, but when you do cut out to the racetrack, because of the grade, because of the way it looks, it doesn't yank me out of it. Like I think it's like you went for a very stylized look, and if it was like extremely naturalistic on the outside, it would have like totally it wouldn't have worked together, but I think you got a good happy medium.
My goal with the lens choice was like, we have to find a lens that is cheap, looks really good, but has we also wanted I need something like super telephoto.
Okay.
So we found this lens, I can't remember, I think it was a Canon FD zoom lens. Very weird lens, because the zoom functionality was super strange. Because it was like this dial on the side of the lens, and to zoom in, you push the dial forward, and to focus it, you turn the dial.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting lens.
What is it called?
I'm pretty sure it was like I think it was an FD lens. It was of that era.
And it ended up looking really nice and accomplishing the goal that we had originally had when we ran out of time for. Because I guess to clarify too, that day that we were shooting at the racetrack was the last day that the racetrack was going to be open for the season.
Yeah, right.
So,
right.
And I'd broken down the schedule, and basically we knew we only had 3 chances to mount a camera to a car, basically. Okay. And I had originally hoped to have trackside stuff, basically where we could track with the cars on the racetrack.
Yeah.
And we weren't able to have the time to do that. So I was like, okay, what's the best way we can accomplish this?
With
zoom lens. Yeah. Big long lens
Yeah.
on the far end of the track. And it ended up looking fantastic. I was really pleased with the stuff you were able to grab with that lens.
It was fun. It's just like, it's such a different perspective than like when do you use a 600 millimeter lens?
Nature photography.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Not
which
often.
we never do.
No, right.
So it was the first time I was using something that was that punched in, and it was like, it's a 600 2.8. So it's really shallow depth of field.
Yeah.
And it looked amazing.
Yeah.
And just like you just point it anywhere, and it's just such a unique perspective of just like compression.
Yeah.
That you just don't get with any other type of lens. And as you were
Is it
saying,
a PL mount or is
was a
it
PL mount, yeah.
mount? Okay. Wow.
So yeah, it was a very interesting lens considering it looked like a photo lens, but it was made for film.
So and the lensing for everything else was the CNEs or?
It was, but it had some Joe flavor added onto it.
Okay, explain Joe flavor. Okay, so we should say
Joe's madness.
there are people who probably don't know what we're talking about, but we're talking about just the different lenses for different things. The Canon CNE cinema lenses are very clean lenses.
Right.
There's not a lot of aberration. There's not a lot of distortion. They're very, if anything, you would accuse them of being too clinical.
Right.
Like they're very sharp, not unsettlingly sharp, but any of the bokeh or any of that is very clean and circular and simple. But this definitely has a cool look to it. What is Joe's magic for the lenses?
Yeah, so
there you go.
I guess. Basically, I mean, it's a very old school trick, but we got some clear filters and we hung them with a little crab claw off the front of the lens and put some chapstick on the clear filter, and then would specifically rotate it and kind of smear it on just the edges of frame to kind of give us a little bit more of that swirl, a little bit more of the softness, the vignetting, some of the aberration that you kind of want to get out of your lights. And yeah, it really, really helped cut the digital edge. I don't know. I mean, I feel like we talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Cutting the digital edge on a very clinical look is hard to do.
Even with the cameras we're using, and the camera this was V-Raptor. Was it
No,
Komodo's?
this was Komodo.
No,
And
it was
there's
all the
helium. That's right.
So the interviews were helium then.
So we
We got a lot of cameras.
The Raptor.
Welcome to Camera
failed us.
Talk.
Yeah, so like we had the Komodo did all the on car shots.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of the telephoto shots was all the helium because we couldn't get the Raptor that day.
Right.
Because there was another shoot going on. And then for the actual interviews and all the stuff in the museum, that was all. The wide was the Raptor, close up was helium, and then we were going to shoot all the B-roll with the Raptor because the Raptor just has the best dynamic range. But then there was one of the cards got corrupted, and it kind of spooked us, and so we shifted to the helium. So actually, most of the B-roll shots are actually the helium.
I love, honestly, helium, older camera, but I love
so
the
good.
helium.
It is a great
does
look.
look good. It looks really good.
Oh, the close-up.
And I say it's
Yeah,
an older camera. It's shot. The helium sensor has been used on the hundreds of movies. Like it's a movie camera that's just not the sparkling new toy. Speaking of cameras and expensive cameras and dirt racetracks and rattling cars, let's talk about the shots on car and how you guys did that. What that was like. This is the last time. This wasn't a shoot planned for these cars. You guys were going while people were really racing these cars.
Yeah.
Talk about that process, how you did that.
Yeah, we looked like a pit crew because we'd run up to the car because basically they had their set schedule that they were going out on in these different heats with these different eras of cars. So that was the other consideration, was I wanted to get variety in the kind of cars that we were mounting cameras to. I wanted to get at least 3 different cars, right? So we had to schedule getting the cameras rigged up on these cars within a very short window of time when they'd pull into the pits, basically into the middle of the track, before going out into their next racing heat. So we'd be standing there with all the gear. We'd run up, they'd pull in, we'd be mounting everything up, making sure everything was all set, double check, and then send them out. They'd drive out on the track and give us a couple laps, and the camera would just be mounted for those couple laps.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think it looks so cool. And one thing that I love that you guys did is you embrace the rattle of it.
Yeah.
Like there are some car stuff where it's too smooth and I don't feel like you feel like you're racing. Like if this had been on now obviously there's beautiful cinematography with, something like a gimbal mounted on car or follow car or something like that. But I love the rattle of it. It feels like so appropriate for it. Was that intentional? Is that what you guys wanted?
Joe was very intentional from the outset. He very much wanted that. And that was.
Yeah, I wanted it to be real. You know, like I had this very strong sense of I want us to feel what the driver is feeling, because when you're in one of those cars, it's so intense. Like you don't realize that you're only going 30 miles an hour, maybe coming into a turn, but it feels like you're going 150. So making our cameras feel that, I thought would help kind of sell the intensity of what these guys are doing.
Yeah.
So,
and it was a fun time mounting them.
Yeah, talk about that. What does the
challenge.
mount look like, and how does it work?
So we used a hard mount from a Matthews. I don't remember the actual kit is called, but it's from Matthews, and it's just a car mounting kit. And initially it comes with suction cups, but I was like, that's not gonna.
Yeah.
There's no way when a suction come to these cars, it's gonna be way too intense, and they're definitely gonna fall off. So I went and bought some just leather strips, because I was looking at the cars online. I'm like, okay, hopefully there's some like mounting points, some like, whether it be roll cages or other posts that we can like just take a pipe clamp to, and just crank it and hope that like, and by using the leather, we wouldn't scratch the cars.
Yeah. Oh, I see. So you bought leather to put around some hard mount place on the car.
Yeah.
You'd use a pipe clamp to mount it off there.
Yeah.
Because the suction cup wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then from there, it was just like orienting the camera. Initially, we taped up the entire camera for the first run.
Taped up all the fans and everything?
All the fans.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, just for people listening, so these little Komodos are like, half of them are fans. There's tons of fans.
They're not weatherproof.
No, not at all. And they're made specifically. The reason that is because the amount of punch that Red is packing into these small cameras means that all of the circuits would overheat if you were recording that much data in that high fidelity. So they fans, and they can be loud sometimes. The fans on these cameras are like constantly circulating air to keep it cool. But you were taping it up. Why were you taping it up?
To keep the dust out. We were just worried about it. Like, just, I don't know. Like, I guess dust wouldn't necessarily mess up the electronics, but cleaning it, but it could, and we just didn't want to risk that. But the first time we taped it up, it overheated. Like, we got the car came back, and we turned on the footage, and before the car even got on the track, the camera shut off.
Oh,
so we're just like, oh boy.
So you had to just let it go. You just had to.
Well, Joe rigged up something that worked pretty good.
Explain that.
Basically, what I did is I took tape and one of the a little felt cover that we had for one of the screen protectors. Basically, I took tape and I created little like air pockets, like little cups, so it could still circulate air, but in a way that it wouldn't get mud or dirt into those spots. So I kind of made little sections where the air could come in and come out.
Yeah.
That wasn't going to be affected by
I think, and we had talked
dirt.
even before that, it's like, could you put ice packs around it or something?
Build some cage or something.
Yeah.
And it kind of came down to the scheduling of we don't have time.
And just two of you guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just the two of us. We got to get these shots and, we got to make it work. And we were very lucky because we only technically had the time to get 3 shots. But we were able, that first one was a failure, and we were able to still get 3 at the end of the day because we hustled like crazy.
Yeah.
Which is wild because they went out probably 12 times.
Yeah, but it was getting it timed up with the heats that were coming out. That was really, really difficult.
Yeah, because we would have depending on because it was like different types of cars every time they went out, and it was like if we were trying to get a variety of different cars, it was like tricky to time all that up. And we didn't know the schedule beforehand, so we couldn't I wish we did know the schedule, but they
didn't know.
They didn't know.
I still can't believe you got these guys to just be like, yeah, throw that on my car.
Yeah, these guys were super cool, by the way. I want to make sure that's in this video. Everybody was so nice to us. I mean, they immediately were like, oh yeah, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
The one guy didn't care. He's like, oh, scratch my car. It doesn't matter. Yeah. We were like, no, we're not going to scratch your $1 million car. It's not going to happen.
Are they really that expensive?
So not $1 million, but some of these cars are very valuable.
Okay.
Not so much I would say probably more on the historical level.
Yeah,
got it.
Some of one of the cars was, a early 1800s car. I mean, we're talking one of the first cars.
Not the one on the track though. No.
It was a car that ended up getting out on the track. Yeah, like we're talking incredible history, and from different eras. And then some of those dirt track cars are real cars from past seasons from the 70s and 80s and stuff. And at the time, they were worth $500,000 a piece, for these cars, and now to just keep the upkeep on them is like $30,000 a year.
That's wild.
So they went all out. I mean, some of them. I remember one of them, one of the cars, the engine exploded.
Yeah. Well,
not like in a dramatic way. As in
Where
like,
were you guys? Where was the lens? Come on, dude.
we were running around trying to
trying to get on that car, but then it came back, it rolled back in, and it was like there was literally. They opened up the hatch and literally there was like a hole
in the engine. Yeah.
It was wild.
There was a story from a local museum that does like World War II vehicles, and they have tank rides. And I remember this one day, it was really cold or whatever, and they were like, it was like a kid they had just given permission to a kid. It's like, we'll give you a ride when we loop back around. And then as it was looping back around, the tank caught on fire. It's like, okay, I was really lucky the kid wasn't on
was not in the tank.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Honestly, yeah. Yeah. Sorry for the just fan on fire.
That is incredible though.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the mounting looks cool. I think like one thing I'm curious, like you guys going into this, or guys having done this, what would you do differently if you were going to attack this again? Also, like anything you learned on the project, anything that was unexpected about the way you're filming and then how it turned out?
I guess for me, there's just certain shots I would have liked to have gotten with the mounting. It was just that we just didn't have time to get because we had a certain idea as to what we wanted to get, and then the thing is, we go in there, we didn't know how much time it would take to mount up the cameras. We had hoped it would take, I don't know, like 15 minutes or something.
Yeah.
But it ended up taking about a half an hour per time because like there was a lot of, and we got faster at it. The first couple times took a while, but like just making sure it's solidly on there, and then like on top of like mounting everything up, they're all just like the whole system is built on like
triangulation, so
like ball sockets.
Yeah,
so like the ball sockets can they can get loose.
Yeah.
So we had to. There's like ways to like ensure, and especially like the camera is on one big ball socket. So if that thing, and you can crank it as much as you want, but like with the
rattle of
it's
the
still
car.
gonna move.
Yeah. So we had to do some like additional triangulation with the camera itself to the body of the car, and then like roping, and then doing like a safety rope over the whole thing to ensure like if it all just comes off, that it at least.
It's gonna be dangerous too if it came off under the wheel or something. The camera would be the least of your concerns at that point. That wouldn't be.
Yeah, you don't want it to hurt somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like the time, all that, like we just didn't have the amount of time that we also didn't know what the cars were going to look like. So it's hard to figure out we kind of had an idea, but like exactly what shots we didn't know where the mounting points were. So that also was a factor as far as like what shots we were able to get.
Yeah.
But they were just like, I think that was the biggest thing. It's just like
you just want more. You just want them to get more shots.
Yeah, I think more crew would have helped with that too.
I think for what it's worth, I think the edit like feels very rich. Well, I think when you had come and talked and showed some edit samples of your like other things that you'd seen where there were a lot of different shots, quick cutting, like even some of that frantic sort of like camera moving on cuts. Like that's one of my favorite things is when you hear the engine start to rumble and then you see the camera shake inside the museum and then we're back on the racetrack. I think that's like,
that was all Joe.
Yeah, I mean that's
literally. I was getting the shot, and then Joe comes over, just starts shaking the camera. I was like,
and you're like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Just trust me. We're gonna need."
I think it's dope. I mean, it's like it has an intention to it. It feels special. Like those little moments, those little like flourishes feel really special, and especially, and it's not like there's no like extravagant post production in this. Like this is like there's no like serious VFX work or digital post zooms or anything like that. It's very much like you guys were planning for a look when you went in, which always makes things better.
Even like the fast cutting with like the old footage, a lot of that was just I was just like throwing shots together and like just threw on a couple of them, just like throwing multiply on it.
Yeah,
it's like
Yeah,
Looks
right,
cool.
right. Some of
I had
those
the
little
plan-
flickery things. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the plan to later on do more work on all that stuff, but we just kind of ran out of time as far as.
Yeah, I feel like if we could have gone back, a lot of my original hopes for the video would have had at least one more day of trackside racing.
Yeah.
And it just came right down to the wire. We didn't know what kind of cars were going to be there on the day, so we weren't able to plan how we were to mount the cameras and stuff because we didn't know what cars were going to be there.
Yeah.
We didn't know who was going to give us permission. All we knew is the museum was very gracious in saying, yeah, we'll give you trackside passes and you can get in the gates
Yeah,
and you can
that's
do whatever you want
That's
with
sick.
the people that are there.
I think that's one of the most fun parts about like some of these documentary run and gun things. When you can take a documentary and then make it feel like a lot was, you knew a lot going in. And I think I think you guys did that. And I think it's really fun. Yeah.
There's also follow car was something we were hoping to do.
Yeah, I really wanted to do that, but yeah, that's why we got the zoom lens.
Yeah. Extended edition, extended edition.
Next year.
Yeah, exactly.
That's been the biggest thing. Whenever I show this to anybody, it's like they want more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, partially, it's like
Yeah.
I think the tricky part is that we had to make the cut short, and we didn't have enough content in the B-roll. We didn't have enough B-roll or A-roll to be able to like make a longer video. But
Right.
anybody that like doesn't know about the sport itself or about who Lynn Paxton was, like there's definitely some. They want more from the video to be like explain that stuff, which
Right.
I think it's a great like opening entree to that world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of these short form docs are. They're just like an invitation to know more.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it works on that level.
Yeah. And that's what I told the museum too. I told them, I was like, set your bar real low. We're just trying to get people excited about a burger. You know, like this is just a little teaser of like racing in this museum. Check it out. It's cool. You know?
I hope it works for them. And I know that they were excited when they saw it and they're showing it at an event coming up or something. And so yeah, big thanks to the EMMR Museum for letting us, mount objects to things and turn off all your lights and for sharing all the interviews. Their interviews were great too. I love it because I think sometimes it's like there are good, rich human stories in so many corners. And I think like people, sometimes you can go in on a project and you can think there isn't going to be anything to like pull on the heartstrings, but it's never true because people are people and people have hopes and dreams and things that hurt and things they're passionate about. And it really, the subject matter sometimes isn't even the important thing because and I think that's what's so cool about projects like this is it's like, you just talk to someone and you guys did good with these interviews. And I assume they were quick, but you guys did great with these interviews because it's just the little bit of humanity that comes out when people are really passionate about something. That stuff is so special. And that's one of the best things about documentaries is that you can get real people sharing real things. And
totally.
I love this format. So yeah, awesome guys. Thanks for sharing Dirt.
Yeah.
Dirt and
absolutely.
Legends. Well, first, okay, last thing. How did the title? Because I know this is something. So talk about the title Dirt. Because I know you're not fully
sold on it. Still, yeah. Well, so I didn't have a title for it at first because I didn't know what it was necessarily going to be about. Because I was like, okay, it's like a Lynn Paxton memorial video. Like I didn't have a title for it, but Jeremiah.
This is our head of production, Jeremiah.
Head of production, Jeremiah. Made the file structure name Dirt
because you didn't have a title.
Because I didn't have a title, and it was like dirt track racing. Like he knew the kind of premise. And then just as a joke, we were like, what if the title was just Dirt? And then like it just kept going until we were almost finished editing. We're like, what are we gonna call this? Like it needs a title. Yeah. And I was like, well, it's about these legends and stuff. And we were like, well, Dirt and Legends, I guess.
It was your wife that came up with it, right?
Yeah, it was. It was. We were sitting because I was showing her a cut, and she was like, Dirt's fun. And I was like, I can't just do Dirt. She was like, Dirt and Legends. I was like, now that it's a little bit better. Legends. It's a little bit better. But it gets under your fingernails a little bit. It's cool.
Yeah, it's like Dirt.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. Awesome. A little attention grabbing. This is a little odd, but I think it works.
Yeah, so thank you, Jeremiah.
Yeah, thank you for file structure name conventions.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. If you guys want to learn more about Coronation, hear more about our projects and passion projects like this, or some of our client work, tune in next time to Heralds and Fools.
Yo. Oh, shit.
We're doing so good.
Here, let me grab some paper towel.
Don't know what IP is. Spilling my coffee everywhere.